edition of Noel Mcdermott's Wellbeing Show, and I'm Noel Mcdermott, and it's my show. That's why I called it that. It's really because I can't remember who I am. So if I say that at the beginning, I sort of go, that's who I am, great. Then I go, it's the Wellbeing Show. Oh, that's what I'm doing. It's the Wellbeing Show. That's how I do my life otherwise. I've got two amazing guests on, Annie and Jennifer from Seek Healing, who we'll be chatting to in just a second. But first of all, I just want to remind you, if it's anything close to the equivalent of 9 p.m. on Wednesday, the 1st of December, 9 p.m. UK time, and the various versions of that around the world, then this is live. And it'd be really, really cool to have you join in. The best way to join in is by dropping a message onto my mobile number, my cell number, if you're outside of the UK, which is +44 7506 319 745. That's +44 7506 319 745. And do it via WhatsApp, I reckon. That's a good way of doing it. And you can call as well if you want. I'll get you on. I'll make you a star. That'd be great. So it'd be lovely to hear from folks. We're streaming live, as I said. If you're listening to this at any other time outside of between 9 and 10 p.m. UK on the 1st of December, it's a recording that you're hearing, so don't call me, because it might be early in the morning and I don't want to know, to be honest. Only if it's live, I'll welcome the call at that point. So enough of me. We have two amazing guests. One of our, from all the way across over in North America, and one guest, Annie McCullough of the clan McCullough. Is that your colours of your clan that you got over your shoulder? You got your little dirk hidden down your sock and you're ready to run wild and sort of chop people up. So good for you, Annie. Sort of on the edge. She's visiting her family, so she's on the edge a little bit, as we all are when we visit our families, maybe. But it's great to have you back on with us again, Annie, and a brand new guest for us that we've not had before, Jennifer Nicolaisen. No, that's not how you say it, is it?
Not great. Close. Nicolaisen.
Nicolaisen. Thank you, Jennifer, from Seek Healing, which is what? What's Seek Healing? If you give us the headlines on that.
Sure. Seek Healing is a nonprofit organization based in the US. We're centered in Asheville, North Carolina, in Western North Carolina, down south in the country. And Seek Healing is a nonprofit. We do active work in the community. We're also really forerunners in what we call the social health movement that I know you, Noel, are an advocate for, and many, many more people increasingly in the mental health services world. But we exist really for the sole purpose of creating experiences of human connection that facilitate healing and training people for free in a really accessible, universally available way in healthy communication techniques and experiences.
Yeah, great. We're going to break that down a little bit, but just say that there's sort of the models of mental health care in the UK and the US tend to be quite different. The UK from the mid-80s onwards started closing down its institutions, which I know you tried in the US, and then big corporate bodies decided that they wanted to claw it all back, I seem to remember. And I'm trying to remember which president was, but it was way back in the midst of time, one of your presidents. It was JFK, who initially tried to bring in reforms to bring in what we call care in the community. So I would say it's not just me, I'm an advocate of it. I think there's a lot of evidence that supporting people through community connection, it's actually very evident. The science behind it is rock solid. Whereas the science behind putting people in a psych ward and putting them full of drugs and that making them well doesn't exist. So,
very much so, which is why I'm kind of constantly in this paradox of, well, why do we still see so much of that happening in the world?
That's right. Well, it's pretty simple. It makes more money. That's all, and even here in the UK, even though there's no profit motive, it costs on average a psych ward in the UK, which has, I think, about 10 people on average, will cost £1 million for every 6 months. And that's in a system that doesn't generate profit. So it's sort of value for money. That's at the lowest price you're going to get. So it's extraordinarily expensive, and if you're profit motive, if you're profit minded, it means you can become extraordinarily wealthy, to be honest, from that. So that to one side. So in the context of the US and mental health services, I'm quite interested in sort of how you and Annie, you got to this point, and we'll sort of maybe hear something about the journeys from both of you, really. How did you get to this point in what is not particularly fertile soil in the US of producing free mental health services that are effective? Sort of, how did you get to there? And you're still alive. Well done. So somebody hasn't assassinated you. So what's the story there, Jennifer? How did you get involved in this?
Sure, it's been quite a story, and I appreciate the acknowledgement of the trials and tribulations. I could detail them at length. It's certainly it's a paradigm shift for a lot of people to encounter. Even just the existence of the organization can sometimes make people feel uncomfortable. So there's certainly been plenty of that. Let's see. My journey started.
I just want to acknowledge that statement. That's an understatement. It's been, I should imagine, pretty horrific for you at times. And I want to recognize that there are vested interests that have no interest in mental health, but have an interest in making money, and that's it. And they will have targeted you personally and as a group and as an organization, and they will have done everything they can to smash it to bits. And I recognize that. I don't know you, never met you, Jennifer, but I know that story. I know exactly how this system works. So I want to recognize that behind that relatively mild statement was probably a lot of pain, actually.
I appreciate that. Yeah, both from the profit mongering side, that's true. And it has been horrific at times. And I would also say from the perspective of just the level of emotion that can come with our different attachments to what recovery looks like, or to what the right way to help someone heal looks like. Just when you use the word horrific, some of the things that stand out from my journey actually were from, in many cases, other leaders and organizations in the field who just have really, really strong views, where we're coming in trying to offer something that is a little bit less polarized, and in fact operates on the principle that polarities aren't helpful as we're healing from trauma.
Yeah, absolutely. So you personally, and then I'm going to come to you, Annie, and we're going to weave your story in, if that's okay. So how did you stumble into this sort of stuff? Nobody gets born and at the age of 5 goes, oh, I want to be ploughing a furrow somewhere that'll make me a target for assassination attempts. It's not something you wake up and go, yes, what I want to be, mummy. So how did you sort of get involved in this sort of stuff? What's the story there, Jennifer?
Yeah, it's been a journey. If you asked me 10 years ago, would I be doing anything related to this now, I would have probably laughed and not even really understood what you were talking about. So 2016 really is where it starts. So that's 5 years ago now. Well, 2015, really. I had a very close friend. So at the time, and this really ties to my own experience of healing and changing relationships with substances that weren't serving me. So this is my personal story. It's very blended with how Seek Healing got started.
That's great to hear it. I mean, I'm happy to share my story. So it's a space in which that can happen, and it's safe enough. And I would just say to people who are listening, if it brings up strong feelings for you, know that you're not alone. There's lots of help. We will put help numbers out there in terms of the support services that are available both here in the UK and also in the US. So that's just sort of the health and safety warning. So yeah, please feel free to share if you're comfortable with sharing at that level, Jennifer.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. I feel I think you said earlier, I'm not sure if it was before we started recording or not, the power in our stories. And yes, I believe that deeply. So it feels good to share my story and use my voice in that way. And I'm grateful for offering the resources. We're happy to share the resources that Seek Healing has as well. We have free online meetings most days of the week, and with listeners.
James, who's listening in but rarely talks these days because I muzzle him, who's the technician. He will put links out to seek healing and anything that we want. So if there are any particular phone numbers or links that you want to go, just say them. James will put them out on the live stream so people have access to them. Okay.
Sure. Yeah, I can just say them right now since we're on it, but seekhealing.org/calendar. You can see online meetings that are professionally facilitated, but they're all about just coming into equal, non-hierarchical connection with each other. And then there's also our listening line that Annie mentioned. That phone number is 828-547-4547. So it's +1 because it's a US number, +1 828-547-4547. And that's not a phone line, it's a non-crisis line, but it's for just connecting with another person and being able to listen and be heard. Yeah. So those are out there too.
And in the UK, there are similar types of services. So what used to be called the Big White Wall, I forget what it's called now, it's moved on from that name, but if you Google the Big White Wall, that's a relatively free service, people with mood disorders, which is about, it's sort of a closed online social media space for people. It's safe, it's guided in the same way as your service, and it's basically free. I think it's £1 a week to use, which most people can sort of get access to. So similar types of services here. So you were saying you had a history of substance misuse, addiction. I don't know what terms you would use. What are you comfortable with?
Yeah, just in service of starting to deconstruct those barriers we were talking about before between who's sick and who's helping. I tend to avoid the word addiction because it serves to just create stigma in my own brain. Yeah. I like to talk about how I changed my relationship with the substances that I used to be using, because that's really what it feels like to me, is we have ongoing relationships with all kinds of chemicals and behaviors and people. Humans are social creatures. We make relationships with almost everything we interact with. And
yeah, we're relationship making machines for sure.
We are. That's a great way of putting it.
It's absolutely right. I mean, it's like, why do we dominate the planet? Because we can organize into incredibly complex social groups. Why can we do that? Because we can form emotional bonds with each other that stop us being terrified by each other, which is what we otherwise would be. So these wonderful frontal lobes we have, that allow us to love each other and connect with each other, and that's why we're so successful. You know, it's
we're designed to bond with each other.
Absolutely, high five. You get it.
And yeah, well, and 7 years ago, I was deeply bonded to drugs and alcohol. To specifically for me, it was anything.
You had a love affair with death.
With death, well, I mean, we all are in some way. That would take us a whole nother existential rabbit hole.
No, let's not go there. We'd be going off another direction. No, he said a clinical supervisor of mine once described as a human being relating to something like substances is forming a relationship with something that is dead. Whereas forming a relationship to another human being is forming a relationship with something that is alive. And that's the big difference that he felt between the two experiences.
That's a really interesting way of putting it. Because I've always said that I haven't used that language, but the way that I framed it before is that when you're relating with a human, there's a feedback loop. Like there's places where you can set boundaries, places where negotiations can happen. Yeah. Whereas with chemical bonds and relationships, codependency, or the dependencies that we form, every relationship has dependencies built into it, right? It's a part of what relationship is we're kind of constantly navigating how much is my dependency in this moment, and how am I renegotiating that. With a chemical, it's only one way, which can lead to a slippery slope.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think anybody's listening and they want to figure out whether there is an issue with substances in their life, just think about whether you use it in lieu of getting a hug from somebody because you're upset, or giving a phone call to somebody and telling them about something wonderful or terrible that's happened to you. You're using substances instead of people for those things. There's an issue there, folks.
Yeah, well, I also think behavior. In the same breath, I want to name that there's also very good reasons why that happens, and why we tend to feel safer with certain chemicals than we do with humans, depending on what happened to us in early childhood or later in life. Even there can be, the traumas that happen to us when we try to relate and attach to other people can sometimes make it really, really hard. And chemicals can be a little bit.
But let's say more about that. I think it's really it's really important because there's a whole bunch of people who have trauma explicitly in their life that relate to not just chemicals but processes in unhelpful ways, and then there's a whole bunch of people who don't. But they may have inherited stuff, and it's really interesting. So I'm one of those people, you know, I was brought up in an incredibly traumatizing household and daily violence. A father who was brain damaged from his own drinking these days, and was a very frightening and scary man. And my family's norm around drinking looked exactly like alcoholism to the rest of the world. So, but actually, of all my siblings, I would say I'm the only one who would fit the alcoholic label. And I remember sort of meeting one of my sisters before she died. She died of a neurological disorder, and so before she died, I was quite concerned that I wanted to try and sort of remake our relationship. I didn't really know her. I don't think as siblings you can know people that you're just traumatized and terrified of. It gets in the way of getting to know somebody.
Go figure.
It really is. It's really difficult to stay through that sort of traumatic noise, to be honest. But I was quite concerned to get to know her as a human being because I felt like I'd become one myself. And she agreed, and we're doing it. But she said something really remarkable to me, which was, I said, oh, I stopped drinking years ago. I said, well, how did you do that? She said, I had kids and I didn't think it was right to carry on drinking. Same childhood, same parents, but she managed somehow. There was something different. So I think there is something that goes on, I guess. There's a little plus in those of us that maybe choose substances. She chose other things, I mean, without doubt. One of them was beating the crap out of her husband. I don't know why you put up with that. He's a really nice guy, Steve. Sorry, Steve, if you're listening. They loved each other very much, but I don't really mean that about my sister. But it's interesting, I think.
It's complicated, I think, right? There's many, many layers for every individual experience. And as you mentioned, there's a genetic component. There's also just so many layers of experience that contribute to how we experience trauma and what our attachment style ends up looking like. It can be influenced by caregivers in early childhood, but it can also be influenced by our experiences in peer groups as children, even later in life as adolescents.
That's it.
And I think even bigger that is just starting to be studied is on a sociocultural level, how we experience disconnection just living in the society that we live in a world where neighbor relationships and extended family relationships have kind of completely broken down. And we don't have that level of community support. Or how about, the relationships we have with our devices that often replace human contact? There's increasingly, we're starting to understand that there's low levels of traumatic experience that are occurring every single time we have one of those disconnecting experiences. So how all of that adds up to one individual human's particular trauma profile and how we seek out different substances or processes to just get by with the pain that comes from that is really unique.
And I think also I would extend it as well. I mean, there have been studies here in the UK looking at psychosis and and psychosis as an experience related to severe trauma. And psychosis being a creative way that the mind tries to deal with or encompass these incredibly traumatic events that might happen to people. And so for some people, there is a direct childhood trauma linked to substance misuse and there's certain pathways there. But for other people, there seems to be a shattering of the mind and this attempt to try and make sense of that experience by these these psychotic breaks and the attempts to understand it and how—
It's amazing how capable the mind is to do that. Like, you think dissociated identity disorder, how literally we create new personalities to be able to relate to this thing that happened. It's powerful when you think about it. Well,
I mean, I guess I would be of the I would veer towards thinking of psychosis within that dissociative spectrum, to be honest. And I think there's been far too much in the sort of medical psychiatric world. The biological psychiatrists have got far too much power about defining psychosis as this biological phenomenon. And it's not. It's largely a response to environment, as is substance misuse, I think, is largely a response to. But what we can't say is that we know for certain if this happens to a child, this is the pathway that they'll go. There are many pathways that people might go. But we always have to be looking, I think, to trying to understand, how did you end up in this particular road or this particular blind alley, which is usually where I meet people.
And that's so unique for each person.
Yeah.
And I think being heard in the uniqueness of that experience is actually such a critical linchpin to the healing process.
Yeah.
To like having other people, other humans in the world actually hear the complexity of that experience and how it added up.
2015. Going to go back. 2015. You were there. Hang on, we've lost Jennifer. Oh no. She's frozen.
I can hear you, but I'm frozen in a really weird way.
That's okay. No, you look great. Don't worry about it. It's pity you didn't breathe with the little earring thing. That would have been really cool.
How about if I do that?
No, you do that. Let's say you have to go profile, Jennifer, so that you next time we freeze, we get that image. That's it. That's the one. So 2015, we'd started there, and then I got overexcited by the things you were saying, so I went off on a ramble. So my apologies. 2015. How did you? What's the story, Jack and Ori?
2015, I was working as a consultant in project management in Washington, D.C. I was making a lot of money, living a really specific life that in a lot of ways was scripted for me, or that's how it feels looking back on it. And doing lots of drugs that help me move fast in the world. So things like cocaine, prescription amphetamines, non-prescription amphetamines. And a lot of that was pretty normalized in my social circle, especially because, just the kind of young professional way of being in the city. It was like, work really hard during the week, play really hard on the weekends. I didn't really see myself as someone who had an addiction problem or struggled in that kind of way, especially because society kept telling me like, oh yeah, here's a raise, here's more money, here's more validation. It seemed like I was doing what I was supposed to be doing. And so this is all happening for me. And parallel, I have a really close friend from my college years who was really, really unwell. Her bond with heroin was slowly killing her. She'd overdosed several times and had gone to a number of different treatment programs without a whole lot of traction.
Jennifer, you okay? Do you want to just take a breath?
Yeah, thank you.
Just relax a little bit. It's cool. There's no rush here, and it's fine. I can hear and see that this is a challenging memory, and that's all right. It's okay. You'll survive it, but there's no need to sort of give yourself a hard time.
I appreciate it. Thank you. Okay. I think there's something about the speed that we're talking at before, that like
I'm a bit like a human version of
so I really appreciate your invitation to slow down.
I'm a bit like human version of amphetamine when I get excited about things. So it's maybe those bits of your brain are going, I remember this. All right, so we'll slow down and take our time. Annie, I'm going to bring you in soon and find out how you got involved with Jennifer, all right?
I'm good. It's all about Jennifer tonight. I've been here many times. I'm here to support.
So, Jennifer, your friend was having a troubling time on opiates.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, just drugs in general, but opiates were what were really scary, right? And she overdosed one night, the summer of 2015, and called me in the wake of that experience. So she survived thanks to naloxone or Narcan. I don't know what y'all call it in the UK.
Similar names. So for people that don't know, it's used in overdoses. Not so much in the UK, but it's very common in the US. And sort of first responders will have a needle that can go up the nose, and it will stop people from overdosing. Yeah, life-saving medicine. So it brought her back to life. She called me in the wake of that experience. I'd been, just supporting her and being there as a friend through the years since our paths had gone different directions. And, for whatever reason, she called me. And that was the beginning of what ended up being several years of partnership and helping, really both of us helping each other find our way to healing. At the time, I thought I was helping her.
Her parents weren't.
Right. So I'm just going to stop there because I think that's maybe the most important statement of the whole evening. Like on reflection, I thought I was helping her, but on reflection, she was helping me. And there's something extraordinary that can happen in that situation.
Absolutely. And that is specifically the concept on which Seek Healing was born. My journey ultimately into recovery and changing my relationship with chemicals and going through a plant medicine treatment that changed both of our lives was a huge part of my story. Yeah. But what we learned was that the real medicine was connection and relationship, and authentic relationship where you act as a mirror for each other. Yeah. Authentically, and how to get into those types of communication spaces, which I've never experienced in my life. Honestly, the way that I grew up and the way that I received the conditioning that society gave me, I don't think I had ever really experienced what a slowed down, present, meaningful conversation felt like before I went through this experience. And since then, I've encountered a number of amazing practitioners in the world who've helped us design curriculum and programming around how to create containers that set people up to experience that kind of depth and connection fairly quickly, just by creating a space to trust each other.
Yeah. So, and before people say, what is this hippie stuff? I'm just going to do a little bit of science, if that's all right. So essentially, for me, what you're talking about is the development of the frontal lobes of the brain in relationship to another human being. And what tends to happen is, we think about the brain just very briefly, people. You got these three brains generally that we talk about: the brain stem, the stump of the top of the spine, and then the midbrain, which is hardwired for our early social sort of hominid swinging through the trees times. And then what people think of as the brain, the foldy grey matter, but particularly the frontal lobes here are what contain our higher functioning language, thinking, language comprehension, personality are all up here. And this is only formed, it's not hardwired, it's only formed through social interaction. And we know this because there are these extraordinary and horrifying brain scans that have been done on children that were severely neglected. And they have holes where there should be brain matter here. They have holes because of the lack of social interaction in their early lives. The brain didn't form, the frontal lobes didn't form. And those children, when they become adults, look like that they've had huge trauma, look like that they have huge issues around all sorts of things, because this frontal lobe, the social bit, the thing that primarily enables us to exist in the world healthily, didn't form. And so what you're describing, and this plasticity, this capacity to form this, remains possible for the whole of our lives unless we do physical damage to ourselves. And when we learn to do that, when we learn to form relationships and grow, literally grow connections in our brain, we have the capacity to form relationships to other bits, early bits of the brain that are on overdrive because of these traumatic or overwhelming experiences. So for example, when you do brain scans of the back brain, this bit here, there shouldn't be much activity because its job mostly is to do things like breathing, heartbeat, stuff like that. There's not a lot involved in that. But brain scans of soldiers who've come back from combat show this bit of the brain right at the back, highly activated. And you have to work at forming a relationship between this bit and the bit back here and calming that bit down. So for me, that's what you're talking about.
Yeah, well, and it's really fascinating how as we create and seek out experiences of secure attachment later in life, we can go through that healing process exactly as you're describing, and that those parts of our brains that are either underdeveloped or full of holes can start to fill in through empathic relationships, through experiences of secure attachment with another person, even if they're relatively brief. We're just starting to understand like what's happening in the brain states that allows for that to occur, but we do know is that it's an increased state of neuroplasticity. And it's something that we can all access at any point in time. It completely changed my life.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And that sort of mutual connection and healing as well, I think, is particularly profoundly important, which what I think of as peer-to-peer healing. It's because the power differentials have gone.
Yeah, and this is where it's starting to be, it gets, we're really on the edge of the neuroscience here, right? Like understanding what are the actual parts of relating and relationship that contribute to that, to the experience of a truly neuroplastic healing moment.
Yeah.
And all that we really know to point to right now is what we experience in this, what we can see and feel and kind of cognitively categorize and like mark the features of a relationship or an interaction. And one of the biggest ones is what you just named, mutuality or non-hierarchy, an experience where both people are sharing power equally in the relationships. This is why in typical patient-provider settings, where there is this feeling of like, oh, I'm the one who's going to tell you how to get well, we don't ever feel that. When I try to point people towards like what I'm talking about with this sense of social connection, it's that like heartwarming feeling that you have when you're talking to a really good friend. You walk away from a conversation, you just like feel good, like your body feels good, you're a little bit happier, like maybe there's a little kick in your step. You don't often get that experience after meeting with a doctor, and it's often because of this lack of like, there's not the type of connection that we're trying to point to right now, Noel, isn't present in those relationships, often because of a lack of mutuality.
But it could be. I mean, the annoying thing is it
can be.
Like you say.
Absolutely.
It doesn't need
if it was
time.
just named.
That's right.
Really.
It doesn't need time. It just needs a state of mind and a state of being on the
and a little bit of an awareness of what the communication tools are that can get you there, which usually, and this is nice because we can like kind of just throw this out there for listeners as a quick tool. The quickest way into authentic, real human connection is revealing what your experience is in this present moment. So a really fast way for a doctor, for example, to kind of get rid of that sense of hierarchy is to say, you know, something revealing like, I'm worried that you're just perceiving me as the guy in the white coat over here, and you know, or maybe I don't have all the answers, or something a little bit vulnerable. Will kind of immediately redistribute the power dynamic in a relationship and make a different experience of connection possible.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to make a quite outrageous generic statement here, but I think it's unfortunate that often when you meet these people in these positions of power, that they are from a specific gender and a specific generation that were told not to be vulnerable and not to be open. And it's really, I remember sort of way back in time when I was my early dinosaur years, when pterodactyls flew and all that sort of stuff. I was sort of helping move people out of long-term institutional care into their own homes in the communities that they'd never seen before. But sort of, don't know how we figured out they were those communities, but there you go. And I remember sort of as part of that process, we were sort of, you know, telling people to stop wearing their uniforms in the hospital. For God's sake, just turn up in normal clothes. But there were that cohort of people that even if they were in jeans and t-shirt, they had their uniform starched into their soul. And this internal armor that was there that stopped and was like, God damn, I'm in charge. And it was like, whoa, okay, I give up, I surrender. And I literally, this is really, it's bringing back a memory, and I think this goes to the heart of what we're talking about. I was working in a learning disability hospital, and it was well known at the time that a lot of women had been scooped up who were effectively imprisoned in these hospitals. They didn't have learning disabilities, they just had children outside of marriage, and they were frowned upon socially. But over the years, they hid in the patient population, and they took on the persona of somebody with a personality disorder so that they wouldn't be noticed, they'd fit in, but actually they were proto-nurses and helpers. And I was pretending to be asleep in a drama group once, and I just wanted to see what would happen if I pretended to be asleep. And one of the women came out of character, and she was literally, she'd been a learning disabled old frail lady up to that point, and then she was out and she was absolutely non-learning disabled. And that's the point, that those roles are given to us and we will play them. And if the role we're given is to be the patient, well, that's what we'll play. That's an extreme version of it, but that's what will happen.
It's a great example.
It's just something I saw. I mean, I just like, I was sitting there going, oh, I've read about this in the literature. Now I'm seeing it. I didn't think it was actually real. And sort of, actually, I went, I'm feel tearful now. I went and bawled my eyes out thinking about this woman, and she was in her 60s and had been incarcerated when she was 22 or something. And she spent all that time in that hospital. I literally bawled my eyes out. It was one of the most disturbing, upsetting things I'd seen in my career to that point. I've seen more upsetting and disturbing things since. That's for another conversation. But it's an extreme version of that thing. And again, I think it's that thing about personality growth. And I'm a great believer in trying to explain to people that we teach people to be ill. And we should be teaching people to be well.
And the hardest part about that is that we don't know how yet, really, as a collective, or we're figuring out, we're fumbling our way through it, because it involves a redistribution of power everywhere, like not just in mental health spaces, but in like, how do we orient to each other in our communities? How do we do things if we don't have hierarchy, which creates division? And, these roles, there's a part of me that wants to be gentle with humanity a little bit, right? Like we came up with these roles and these hierarchical systems because they allowed us to get stuff done. They just created processes so that we could build things, civilizations, economies, organizations. And we're now just kind of in this moment in our evolution where we're opening our eyes to all of that and saying like, oh, wow, look at this thing that we did that's actually keeping us apart from each other, even though it's allowed us incredible productivity and technology development.
And
it's a bit of a conundrum.
Because I think the pandemic has also opened up the lie about that stuff. And it's really interesting, I think, the times we're going through, that we're speeding through a period of time that would have taken 50 years for the changes that we've just been through to happen. But they've happened overnight because of the pandemic. But first I want to bring Annie in, and you've been left on the sidelines and punished for your temerity in making chicken without offering it to us. So I'll bring you into the conversation now. Hello, Annie. Welcome back.
Hi, Noel.
Just honestly, so people know, Annie made butter chicken and she hasn't brought it with her. I know she's on the other side of the Atlantic Ocean, but that is no excuse.
I made it for my mother. I haven't seen my mom in 3 years because of the pandemic, so I made butter chicken for my mother. But yes.
All right, we'll have a vote on that, folks, whether that's a reasonable excuse or not later.
It's really lovely to be back, though, Noel. And honestly, I could listen to Jennifer talk all day. It's literally such a gift to be friends with and work with someone who is so beautifully articulate in her words, but also just so authentic in her being. She's inspired me to.
I would echo that.
I was gonna cry there. Well, yeah, she's inspired.
I would echo that. You can see I've been overexcited because it's been really cool to get to know you, Jennifer. It's like immediately I'm there and whoa, this is great. How did you get involved in this, Annie? How did you get involved with Jennifer and the project? And because the reason Jennifer's here is because you told me about it, and we went, okay, let's get her on.
Right. So, I mean, this is what I think the beautiful thing about, and why the three of us, when you were talking even before the show, it's like the reason we're together is because we believe the same things. And I think the universe thought these are people that need to be together in order to make sure that these ideas are heard. My background in the treatment world is very similar. I mean, I went to treatment and I have a 12-step background, and I have absolute, I would never say that those things shouldn't have been part of my journey. They are a part of my journey. And I had reached a point in my recovery where I was absolutely looking at what else for my own trauma healing, for my own helping of clients that I might have been working with, whether professionally or in a treatment center, or also as a coach. So when I heard from a dear friend about the work that Seek Healing was doing, and that's really where the universe just knows how to make things happen that I could never make happen. This wonderful man, Jeremy French, who runs a beautiful program out of North Carolina as well called Making Whole. He and I had met through Sam, who you and I were talking about, at the West Coast Symposium Conference in Cape Cod a few years ago. And he said to me that day, he's like, I don't know why I need to know you, but I need to know you. And I said, okay. He said, I'm not hitting on you. I said, I know.
I was going to say that very much
No,
sounds like
no,
a pickup
no.
line.
He was very clear, and I was very clear that that was not at all, and I didn't feel that vibe from him at all.
Right, sorry, that's
yeah.
just outrageous. Yeah, okay.
But at some point, he would be another great guest. He's got an incredible story and an incredible
Right.
program that he runs. So anyway, he said to me, my friend Jennifer is bringing her program to BC where you live, and I said, you two need to meet, and that was back in January, and quite literally from that initial conversation with Jennifer, I realized that we were 100% on the same page in understanding, like through different journeys, right? Jennifer's journey was different than mine, but we still arrived at the same place, which was that this isn't working, you know. And one of the early taglines for Seek Healing was rethink rehab, right? I mean,
Yes.
treatment is not, as we talked, treatment the way it is set up is not working, and treating addiction, which is really a symptom, is not going to get us out of this situation. We need to get underneath it. I think that was the first thing that we probably really connected on, was an understanding that treating addiction was just treating another symptom. It was not the actual issue. And I think, you know, Rachel, our director of science, and Johan Hari's book, the opposite of addiction is not sobriety, it's connection. These are things that we all, I think, agree with, and it's formed the basis of coming together as for Jennifer and I to work together on developing, you know, what I hope will be Seek Healing across the world, really. I mean, that's yeah. Do you love hearing that? I love hearing that. And I do. I think that all the connections that I've made over all the years of working in treatment and all around the different you know, places that whether it's in London, whether it's in Canada, the UK, I think there's so many different I think we're coming to a place where more and more people are hearing this idea of social health, of
I mean, it's literally reached the point in the UK where a general practitioner, what you would call a primary care doctor, your family doctor, can prescribe it to you. So now, if you go to see a general practitioner in the UK, they can give you a membership of a group, a walking group, or a local history group, or a gym. You can join a group of people rather than medication and pills.
Yeah, the UK has been really leading a lot of the applications of this concept, specifically, at least from what I understand.
Yeah, it's called social prescribing over here.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very much part of what the NHS can offer you. In fact, that's how I got my first gym membership, was from my doctor giving me that rather than pills.
That's fantastic.
In addition to, and it's growing and growing and growing, I think.
Well, given that the US continues to be far behind, well, depending on how you look at it, just not having the same reach as the healthcare system.
The US
you can kind of think about what we're doing at Seek Healing as a non-healthcare system way of doing that social prescribing. That's like a kind of it in a nutshell.
Yeah, and I think the US is interesting in the sense of I have very little interest or trust in the organizations that run health in the US. I think they're broken, they're corrupt, etc. But that doesn't mean healthcare in its more general sense is that's what it is. I mean, I think Seek Healing is a good example of people on the ground just going, no, that thing doesn't work anymore. I don't want to be a part of it. I want to do something that does work. And this is what works from my experience. One of the things I'm intrigued by is there does seem to be organizations that can constantly pop up that come up with a very similar idea. So we've talked a little bit about 12-step for people who don't know it. It's AA and NA and things like that, these anonymous groups. But fundamentally, when they formed on the basis, they didn't even have 12 steps. I mean, it's like, it's odd. The 12-step philosophies was a book written 30 years after they already been doing this stuff. And what they did was they met each other with similar stories, and they did this thing of seeking healing. Mm-hmm. And I really like your name of your organization, to seek healing. It's this verb. It's not, we will give it to you. You've got to come and seek it. And becoming an active participant in your own growth towards health and well-being seems to me the only sensible proposal to make to people in this field.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I believe it 100% is.
Was that on purpose, that you wanted this active sense of you have to seek your healing? Was it accidental? It's just part of your genetic makeup now? Was it something that you thought about?
Yeah, choosing a verb rather than a noun or a state.
Yeah.
The very first tagline, as Annie said, there's been a history of taglines. The very first one was seek healing, not a cure.
Yeah. And I get that, but tell me why that was important as a statement to make. I know why that's an important statement, but what was it?
Just because of what myself and my co-founders encountered in the addiction treatment world specifically, but then as we broadened in mental health services in its entirety, that there is, because of commercialization, this commoditization of medicine, of cures, of treatment, of, oh, you have this problem, here's the solution, let me sell it to you, let me package it for you, let me give it to you in this shape. And I am a person who 12 steps did not work for. I went a very alternative route, and my recovery has not been abstinence-based. Some of my co-founders are people whose recovery journeys were defined by 12 steps. We came together with very different backgrounds, saying, like, it doesn't matter how you get here or what your path is, how you navigate your relationship with substance. The truth is there is no cure. The truth is it's a process, it's a verb, it's something that we're constantly forever unfolding as we continue this weird experiment of being a human. And so orienting to taking the focus away from treatment, like this is something I can buy or get or have, felt like the most important part of the puzzle.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say that, I think a lot of my competitors in the field, I work professionally in this field, I charge people money, but I'm very careful to say there's no magic bullets. This is a process. This takes years. This is what it looks like. And this is how we reduce your costs. And this is how we plan for the long term, because anybody who knows what they're talking about in this field knows that being well is a journey, a lifelong journey. And you have to make permanent and irrevocable changes in your lifestyle. Mm-hmm. That's the truth. There's no easy way. Sorry.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I'm just agreeing with you, and that you really have to continuously integrate the experience, that whatever experience you had that was your inflection point, and that created this cascade of, starting to heal trauma and look at things in an honest way. I mean, and I think it happens from all directions. Like, my journey was through plant medicine. I worked with a medicine called iboga that saved my friend's life, but then saved my life. It's a psychedelic medicine. And I think in that world as well, you get starting even to get this focus, like this new wave of, psychedelic healing,
clearly work,
which is potentially also getting treated as a silver bullet, right? And that's my biggest concern with those treatments. And what I've advocated for post-treatment is you cannot look at iboga or ayahuasca or psilocybin or any of these as a silver bullet, just like any other kind of deep trauma treatment process. It requires integration, it requires community support, it requires talking about your experience afterwards and making sense of it and creating a reality that integrates it. And if we don't acknowledge that, either with psychedelic medicine or any other kind of treatment process, we're just missing the mark and continuing to try to dole out cures rather than really actively participate in what healing means.
But if we think what a cure is that will take away your symptoms. That's what a cure means. But is that really living life? Is life just the absence of symptoms? I mean, I don't really get that as a sales technique, because what does that look like? And actually, I think it's not fundamentally connected to the way we are biologically. It's not possible in a neurological perspective. I guess you would know this and you agree with it. It's not possible, for example, for me to get rid of the fact that I experience violence, significant levels of violence on a daily basis from birth until around about 9. So those things happen, they're never going away. The only thing I can do about them is change my relationship to them by growing through them dynamically and allowing my personality to grow. The only way my personality grows in that context, in any context, is because I connect with other human beings. And then you have these mirror neurons are activated because other people have had similar experiences, and bits of their personality have formed in ways that are healing of these things. And I get this magical transference of, oh, that you could be like that, I didn't realize, and all that sort of stuff. And that's the way it is. but it's not the absence of symptoms. I mean, I think clinical psychological interventions are really helpful in terms of helping people manage the terror so that they can connect to another person. Like I said, as siblings, we didn't connect. We were too afraid. It's not possible to connect when you're too afraid. And so having symptomatic relief so that you can form a quiet enough space to connect with another human being is great. Having medical sort of psychotropic relief, which is medicine, so that your splitting personality is no longer broken, your psychosis is managed enough so that there's enough of you there to reach out to another human being. All of these are really helpful, but they're not treatments. The treatment is that I can connect with another human being. That's the treatment. That's what we're always looking for. We've always known this, okay? And it's really interesting. I find it fascinating that lots of these peer organizations emerged throughout history, and we seem professionally unable to learn the lesson. One of the reasons might be, and I wonder what you think about this, like there was again, when I was wandering the world with pterodactyls, there were these things called therapeutic communities, which were being looked at as a way of dealing with psychiatric distress. And they became problematic. So there were things like they would switch roles. So they were within psych wards and psych hospitals, and people were experimenting with giving away power and changing power dynamics and changing roles and things like that. And I did a bit of it in some forensic wards way back in time. But one of the issues that came up was that the blurring of boundaries led to inappropriate relationships quite often. And that's often what sort of professionals are afraid of. They're afraid of this big boogaloo thing that the relationships will break down, your people will enmesh, there'll be inappropriate sexual contact, stuff like that. So tell me about, in your community, what's that like, and what's your experience of it, and how do you manage those boundaries, and how do you make it safe, and all that sort of stuff?
It's a really good question, and such an important point to consider, I think, as we're all moving towards this way of healing and being with each other in the world. Yeah, so all of our circles, and so we have meetings, they're called connection practice meetings, which are kind of offered as either an alternative or a complement to a 12-step recovery meeting, depending on, where someone's at in their journey. And we also offer courses called listening trainings, which are really like a therapeutic retreat, as well as a deep dive into experiential education around these different ways of being in relationship and communicating. And all of those and other services that we offer are professionally facilitated. So, and the way that we develop our pipeline of people who practice facilitation, so to speak, we try to not use the word facilitator in order to, again, kind of emphasize the non-hierarchy.
Tell me the word you do. That's really cool. Just use the words that I'm comfortable with and that you use.
Yeah, so anyone can practice facilitation in the community, but there's certain levels of trust that you have to build with other community members in order to gain the trust that lets you have that, lets you hold that much power. Because what we're saying as a community, when we trust you to hold that power briefly, is the trust is that you'll also redistribute it, and that you'll step in when it's needed to take care of others in the group. Right. So it's a 200-hour training that is informed by relational cultural theory, primarily, if you're familiar with that, as well as polyvagal theory and attachment theory, to really create a trauma-informed understanding of what these practices look like. But because people came through the community largely, what we're doing is creating leadership systems that are organically grown from the community itself. So people feel a sense of belonging, a sense of ownership within the community that they are operating in and now working in, like facilitating these experiences. So I think that is a huge part of creating safe environments, is when people feel a sense of belonging.
Leaderless groups are terrifying. You put a human being in a leaderless group and tell them to relate, and it'll break down very quickly. There have been many experiments showing that. The best way of figuring that out is to watch some of that nonsense reality TV, where they stick people in a room and then they go insane. I mean, what do you expect? That's what happens. You're not seeing anything other than the stressful conditions that you put people under in those circumstances. It's wonderful to
So it's important.
Yeah.
I was just going to say what's important is to really remember how humans have done this from some of our most ancient traditions, which is raising leaders up through the community organically and making sure that, so I would say it's partly that leadership development in an organic, community-driven way, and then partly container setting and making sure that we're setting the container. If maybe listeners don't know what I mean by that, but the way that any social experience, any experience we have really has some kind of container around it. It has some boundaries, like this podcast. We're meeting for I think this was on my calendar for 2 hours because we had the pre-setup part, and it's this 2-hour experience. Noel is facilitating. I'm here being interviewed. There are these like structures that we understand about how the experience is going to go. I know that I'm live streaming, so I'm going to try not to cuss or do certain things that maybe would be outside the bounds of that particular container that we have here. And those containers as human beings, that like really helps us understand and feel safe when we know what the boundaries of the experience are. So I'd say it's leadership development as well as the way that we create the containers for these experiences to happen, which we've ritualized. We put a lot of intention into how they're set up in different experiences that we curate as an organization, and they've become heavily ritualized within the community. And you see them at 12-step meetings too, right? It's like how you open the meeting every time. You're setting the container for what this experience is going to be.
Yeah, absolutely. There are rules and regulations wherever you go, and they're necessary. What's necessary is that they allow something to happen in between. So if you contain, something may happen. If you don't contain, it just spills out and nothing happens.
Mm-hmm. It's reminded me of what you said earlier about like uncontained vulnerability, how that can be detrimental in a lot of ways. It
is. It's also, I think, the early days of psychological therapies, people like Freud, etc. They were arguing that these very complex ego structures in the mind had to be unbound, but that's not the case. We live in a culture that is unbound, and we have to bind it. We have to hold it. Anxiety is our big problem. Our minds coming apart is our big problem. We don't have the problem of repression anymore. If we ever did, we are not a repressed culture. That's the truth. We have lost the ability in many ways to safely relate to each other on cultural, political, environmental ways. I would argue, though, that the pandemic has shifted that perspective. And I would argue that the pandemic has reminded us fundamentally that we are connected as social animals, and that's the truth of us.
I think in the best case scenario it has, Noel. I think that because, you're having a conversation with two humans who are both very conscious and very aware. Absolutely, I would agree. And I think there are a number of people who have had an awakening of some kind through this process. Unfortunately, I do not think that has been the case across the board, because we unfortunately are still, we're seeing this crazy polarization. I don't want to go down that road, but I'm just saying there's as much as I do think there has been an awakening for many people. I've heard stories of people moving home to be closer to family, just all kinds of beautiful stories of silver linings, which is my favorite. I would also say that there's this scrambling to get back to normal that I just can't even, when I do see it, I'm quite shocked by, because it's not really, I don't want to go back to the way things were. I'm not interested in it at all.
Yeah.
I would almost argue that part is.
No, I don't think we are. I think I take a Foucaultian view here. I think there's always a situation like that. The reason Trump came up, and I think Obama said this himself, Trump was a reaction to the progressiveness of Obama. And we see that all the time, and that's the sort of, I take that Foucaultian view, when whatever the power is that's operating, resistance fractures and changes, and that's what happens. And I think, yes, you're right. It's definitely the case that some people haven't realized that they've died out, but they have died out, as far as I can tell. They just haven't noticed yet. I
was just going to say, as another option, it's also another way of looking at it is that if this awareness is bubbling up in us collectively and each individual responds a little bit differently, some individuals might have a really resistant reaction to that awareness, right? And sometimes that happens when we're confronted with something that feels really uncomfortable, we try to like push it away as hard as we can and backpedal to the structures that had us feel safe. So I think in a way it still reveals the same thing.
I genuinely believe that the transformative nature of this pandemic, because it's not going away, and people might wish it away and they might think, oh, it's over now, we've dealt with it. We haven't. The pandemic it's like 10 years maybe before the virus has mutated to a level that we don't really need to be worried about variants. So we've done 2 years and we've got another 8 at least to go of this, and Omicrons will come along and remind us of things that we have to do in response to it. And I had a really fascinating conversation with somebody I'm very close to who happens to be anti-vax, and I found really weird knowing somebody intimately who is like that, and because I don't get it. I don't understand why you wouldn't want to take something that might possibly save your life, whatever. But they've shifted, and they've shifted simply because the natural event that is happening has not shifted, because Mother Nature doesn't. Mother Nature has ways of working, and she doesn't really give a shit about us in terms of, she doesn't give a shit about what I think about things. She's going to do stuff, and I can choose to ignore it and get smashed to bits, or I can choose to bow to that truth and that reality and change with it. And I think the truth and reality of this experience is that it's not going away. It's not, and there are certain things I think that structurally will take place. I don't know if it's happening in the US, but certainly here, things like the corporate rental market is over, and that's going to radically shift our cities. And every large corporation I know in London is planning the end of its lease and how it saves money by no longer paying for a huge office space in the middle of London. Every single one of them are doing it. And it's a fundamental shift like that. Things like that are going to take place, and people are going to be working from home much more. I know many industry leaders at the moment who have, they've had a wonderful time being at home. They do not want, they're going back into the office 1 or 2 days a week. And they've had enough of it. They want to watch their kids grow up. And so I think we are.
We are absolutely. And you know what, Noel, we've talked about this, I think, on past episodes too. I mean, the whole thing is, let's not try and fix what's broken. That's just not worth it.
Let's
create what we want. And I think that's what Seek Healing is about. And I think it's what a lot of things that are coming about through the pandemic are about, is about creating what we want to see in the world instead of trying to fix what's broken. Because we are not going to be able to fix the system. The system, I wouldn't even call it a system, because it doesn't work. That's the whole point. It's a broken mission, whatever it is. So I mean, I would much rather, like I was trying to think at the beginning of the show, you guys were talking about like using and people and stuff, and I knew there was a quote that I loved, and I think it's the Dalai Lama that said, the reason why the world is in chaos is because things are being loved and people are being used. And to me, that's the shift that I want to see, right? Where we're not focused on the economy, we're focused on people, we're focused on connection, we're focused on relationship, we're focused, like, society does not run on the economy, it runs on people. It doesn't run on any of it. It is
absolutely. And this is the example I love to give. That's an iPhone, right? And people think that's economics, that's organization. It's not. The reason why we have this is because of our ability to organize into complex social groups. This exists only because of our social nature. It doesn't exist because of opposable thumbs or the ability to think or the ability to draw a diagram. It exists because human beings can tolerate each other at such a deep level that we can do incredibly complex things. And if we can do this, we can choose to do other things. And we can choose to live a good life. We can choose to love each other. We can choose to save our beautiful planet and stop shitting all over it. There's all sorts of things we can choose to do. And it is, I think, a choice, you know? And Gandhi said, don't throw stones at barking dogs, because they won't stop barking and it'll just stop you on your journey. And that's how I feel about the whole treatment industry, mental health and all that. Barking dogs, not interested, you know?
Yeah. I don't even want to give them any, pay them no, never mind, right? It's just absolutely, let's just focus on love and not fear, on healing and not
Yeah.
You know, I mean, we can't, like I said, we're never going to pretend, like you said, Noel, you're not, and it's never going to change your history. You don't change the history. You learn how to live with it by healing,
Yeah,
and we heal.
absolutely, absolutely. Listen, I'm just aware, Anna, you've got your family. You're visiting them for the first time in 2 years, and I agreed that that was probably okay. We were going to forgive you for having that motivation in your life. We're
I'm
going to
gonna go serve
respect,
some butter chicken to my 88-year-old mother. It's true.
yeah. And we're going to respect that, and respect the fact that you have a far more important thing to do, which is go and love and be loved, and that's a sort of gorgeous thing that we want to encourage. Just before we finish, though, Jennifer, tell us again, how do people get hold of your organisation? Who's it open to? Can anybody join? Is it just the US? Give us the headlines now on sort of services and contacts and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so anyone is free to join the program that we offer online.
Yeah.
You can dial in from anywhere in the world. Like I said, go to seekhealing.org/calendar to see the calendar of our online events. Those are the connection practice meetings that I was talking about. They're free. You can drop in anytime. We also offer our listening training course online. But if the times don't work for you, we are looking for partnerships where we can, or we're always open to partnerships where we can come and bring this content into organizations, into treatment centers, really into wherever it's needed. So if you're interested in that, you can email either me or Annie. It's really easy. I'm Jennifer at seekhealing.org. She is Annie at seekhealing.org. Yeah, is there anything else that you want to highlight, Annie?
Well, I mean, you mentioned the listening line, and I think that even though it is a long distance call for people, I don't know where people are dialing in from, but if you wouldn't mind sharing the listening line number again, I think it's one of the most beautiful things that we offer is just an opportunity to connect with another human without it having to be a crisis if you're just lonely. And I think loneliness and being in isolation during the pandemic is that part we also couldn't escape from. So if you wouldn't mind sharing that number again, Jen, I'd appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's become a really invaluable resource here locally, and just for the fact that it is two humans connecting with each other. It's the folks who are online are trained either peer supports or trained through listening training that we offer. Our number is 828-547-4547.
+1 if you're dialing from outside the US. But I presume that number's on your website as well, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
And so people can figure it out. I could go on forever, but we're going to stop because there are important things that people have to do, such as be with families at this really important time of year. It's just been gorgeous to have you both on. In terms of the possibilities going forward, we should really talk. I will email you both, really talk about how we connect you in with organisations over here so that you can bring some of the training. It's much needed. Those will be the natural next steps, I think. So we shall look at that. We're going to finish there, folks. Sadly, I actually genuinely feel sad. I want this to continue. Just as I'm beginning to get Annie talking, she has to go and eat her chicken because I could see her getting all riled up and ready to jump in. She's going to get interested from the girl. But we have to stop there. We'll have to bring you both on again and hear more about what you're doing. For now, we're going to finish. You stay there, you guys. To everybody else, thanks very much for joining us, and I shall see you all next week. And goodbye for now.